Hello and welcome to this special episode of Daughters of Narcissistic Mother podcast. Today, as a guest, we have Meghan Mahealani, who is the founder of the AMBA method, an embodiment practice that supports women in coming home to their bodies after a lifetime of disconnection. Meghan created AMBA to support women in getting to the taproot of patterns and finding lasting freedom from anxiety, overthinking, self-loathing, dissociation, and much more. So welcome, Meghan.
Thank you. It's so good to be here with you, Matilda. So good.
So to give a little bit of context to this conversation, Meghan is one of my precious mentors. And the work I've been following your work and the AMBA method for the past, I think it's about 3 years at this point. And it has been life-changing in my inner world, in all my work with my own trauma. When for all the listeners, we're talking about all the mother wounds I was carrying. You've heard in the podcast, I do speak a lot about my story and my experience. So all of that, this work that we're going to share today, that we're going to talk about today, has been like so incredibly important. And it was like, I know there's an ocean between us because I'm in Ireland and Meghan is in the States, but it was like finding the confirmation and the spokesperson to so many of the things that I really felt. But I had never found anyone that just put it into words in a way that just resonated and made sense. So this is what this conversation is about today. I want to share it with you because I know that this is going to be so helpful and supportive to anyone listening in. So to start, Meghan, if you could just give a little bit, talk a little bit about the AMBA method and how you came to it, that'd be brilliant.
Sure. So I started teaching movement and practices really young. I was 19 when I took my first yoga teacher's training and got deep into yoga and taught, had a studio. And so that's my background. But then at one point I started to meet these embodiment teacher, it's beyond teacher, but a couple mentors that blew my mind in terms of what's possible around inhabiting our bodies. And that started in 2008. And then I really shifted from yoga to orienting to my body as this bio vessel and this access to just profound inner cosmos, that merging that all the mystics talk about. I started to really have an experience of that on the regular through my body. And so that was the beginning of my own connection that I would say is the foundation of AMBA. And then I've taken a lot of time to explore how I inhabit my body in my own practice and process, and studying what I would say is directly with the earth. And all of those years of self-mentorship or body mentorship, body as this supreme teacher of life that I have the gift of getting to be in for this time on earth, that has informed me so much. So I really honor my teachers, and I also honor my body herself as one of those teachers. And then AMBA came about in 2012. I had already been focusing on women because of just feeling the healing that was needed in my own lineage and the healing that I am here to do on behalf of all the women that have come before me that weren't able to do the healing that I feel capable of doing. And so the focus on women came about from my own, it was like an internal knowing that that's what I'm here to do, and creating a safe space, the space that I had always wanted but never quite gotten in, yoga trainings and healing events. So I created this practice, but of course none of these practices did I create. They just came through me, and I kind of put them together in a way that makes the most sense to me, working with the elements. And then it's really evolved over time as I have, and we just go to such deep, rich places together, as you know. I've thought many times, like, how do I make this accessible to all or to more women? And I just realize I'm really, really here to share to the depth that I can. So I can share more, but I'll stop there. Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely perfect. And you mentioned there that feeling of being called to heal the lineage of women, the women before us that have not have had access to these incredible tools. They didn't have the information. I do, when you're listening into my podcast, I never come from a place of blaming of the previous generations, although we're talking to daughters of narcissistic mothers. So we recognize and understand what our mothers have done without awareness to us as children, and then the trauma that has caused, but there's never coming from a blaming. And when we do this work, we're actually really breaking that cycle, means also bringing healing to the previous generations, and then forward to the next one. So it's such a incredible work. And I know from knowing you, and with, like, I've done one-on-one work with you as well, and there was a lot of sharing and beautiful experiences in that, and that you spoke to your relationship with your mother. And I remember connecting with you on that as well, because we sort of have that as a background that is sort of common. So if you would share a little bit about that, that would be super helpful.
Sure. I'll just go anywhere to start. It's like we're opening up a big box here. Sure. I so the first thing I'll say is, yeah, so my mother fits into the what I've learned through my own study, that category of, they call it the dark triad or the Machiavellian triangle. So
Yeah.
whether it's narcissistic or sociopathic or psychopathic, that full on disorder, any of those kind of fit into this, right, this space. And so that's a thing. And it's I didn't know it was a thing always. So growing up, I had no idea. I just thought my mom was everything. She was just the most amazing angel in the world. And that makes sense because that's what she wanted. And so she's a smart woman. And so she figured out how to have me almost dissolve, right? Almost close to dissolve who I was, and just worship her, for lack of a better word. And so that was my childhood. And I don't have a lot of memory. I have a few memories of as a child, but a lot of that is blocked out. And I know our minds do things to try to keep us safe. So it wasn't actually until my early to mid 20s that I started to see through what was going on and see and feel that there was maybe some harm there. And so that took a while to unpack, because it was this 180 shift from this woman who was my best friend, my almost everything. And now I'm seeing this dark side to her, all this stuff that is going on that I was never able to see, strong enough to see. And so that was a whole process. And then I'll just kind of jump forward for time's sake. It wasn't until being in a relationship with a man who, funny enough, they have the same birthday. They share the same birthday. So I thought that was the divine was like really giving me a clear message. Not the year, but the day and month. And it wasn't until recognizing, and just doing really deep healing work around this abusive relationship. And it wasn't physically abusive. It was the same type of abuse that my mother had, that I'd experienced with my mother, which is this like mental, kind of like it captures your mind and it hijacks your mind, right? And so after that, it was like the light bulb went off to a whole new level of what this was, what my role was, and then the steps in healing, because every step in healing from the relationship with the man, this romantic partner, it took me through that same kind of process, the same journey with my mom. So I was really grateful for that, really grateful to have found someone who was so similar, that I got so close to and trusted so much that I could kind of take off any blinders. It was kind of like round 2 of the revealing and the unveiling. And at this point, I don't contact my mom. She's not in my life. And I feel great about that. I don't wish her harm. It's not like, oh, you deserve this, I'm cutting you off. It's just that, and I know this, it's like I've tried so many times and given a lot of really heartfelt opportunities for repair. And since after doing that and giving some space and really doing all that's on my end to create a space for healing between us, I realized that it's just not, she's not going to work, and that's okay. And I can send her a lot of love from this distance, and yeah, and it's like, well, we can talk more, but there's so much I have to say about that, and also letting ourselves be divinely mothered, and the way that our mothers weren't maybe able to give us anything like divine mothering, and then something maybe closer to the opposite of that. We have all this space from what we didn't receive. Now we have all this space, right? Once we clean all that up and clear it out, for all this love to pour in from a source that's so available. So yeah.
And that is like, I know that's the key to your work, but at the very least, it was for me, actually working with you. That has been key. Key that I received was accessing this mother energy that always was with me, but I didn't know, because when you're not modeled, I remember you mentioning that at some point, like find that mother energy within you, and I was like, I have children, and so I am a mother, and yet I was like, I don't know how to open up to, I can give that because I've seen how that's not given. So I can just, I've been modeled what not to do. So I can just kind of have a guideline onto what to do with my own daughters. But I didn't know how to open up to receive that energy within myself. So I know you're like, yeah, I just want to hear your take on that, as in explain a little bit maybe how that work, that deep relationship with your body and that exploration actually supports us in opening up to that mother energy that is actually within.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the practices we do in Amba is earth resonance. We work with, that might not be the best way to say it. We explore, we tap into the physical relationship between our body and the earth, and then the spiritual, emotional relationship between our bodies and the earth. And going into our bodies, really going into the body with our presence and getting really still and really quiet. Not like a seated meditation, but for those listening, what we do in Amba for meditation, we lie down and we let every muscle of the body just melt into the earth. And we let our bodies, our bones, our organs, everything feel that love of gravity, as I call it. And when our bodies can feel that, there's no questioning it in the mind. It's so clear, so clearly experienced. So that's a big part, I feel like, for all of us, of feeling the realness of the love that's available from the Great Mother, from the one that holds us all, and the way that that energy is expressed through the earth is so nurturing, since we do have bodies, and they have all this memory of where we didn't get loved and held and nurtured, and all of that that's stored in our bodies. It's like all of that starts to shift once we open up to feeling this embrace through our bodies. And something that I love so much for my own personal journey, and I still use it when I get into a hard moment, and what I've shared with other women I've worked with, is we often have a feeling of not being seen, not being gotten. Maybe it's a little deeper for daughters of narcissistic mothers, because there was never any intention to be seen or understood from our mothers, right? So this feeling that going and being with the earth, and we can be inside. If you're in an apartment listening to this, you can lie down and still feel the earth, even if you're not right directly on the earth. But ideally, we go out into nature, and getting that physical feeling of the earth holding us, it starts to change things on its own. Like, we don't have to do anything. We just get to let ourselves be held. Even the parts that can't relax yet, that are still scared or gripping or clenched, they get to be held, even if they can't receive the holding yet. It's like the mother that's not trying to get you to change. Just, you are so welcome as you are. And to feel that in the body, to feel that in our bodies it can be such deep healing, as you know.
Yeah. That is like without words, because we're used to do a lot of talking. I know a lot of women that work with me now. They come to the programs, they come to the work, and like they maybe have taken therapy and they've done a lot of that, and so there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of wanting to talk, which is like, it is a part of the process. It's not that that's the bad part. I've done a lot of talking as well. But I do remember in my own journey doing a lot of talking and realize how I was able to talk a lot about a lot of trauma. Like I've had, as the listeners all know, Megan, you know that, like I've had my mother's abuse and I've suffered sexual abuse when I was a young teenager. So, and I could talk and talk and talk forever about it, but it was never going beyond my chin down. Like it was just a lot of talking. And instead dropping into that practice, feeling that sensation of being held, which I actually do remember really well, my body resisting like hell at the beginning. Like there are times that gets really challenging and uncomfortable, but the allowance to be whatever it is and being held, then even after that, when you talk, you are actually talking from a different place. It's like you've unlocked and opened doors, and even the words, everything I found had a different meaning, and there was actually a release that happened each time then. So that was just to strengthen what you were saying. It is such an incredible, it sounds such a simple practice, but it's not simple as in it's so potent. Can
Yes.
you speak actually a little bit to that, like the challenging part? Because that's something that I'm seeing happens a lot. I've experienced it personally, but I'm seeing that with people working. When we do this work, actually emotions that are extremely intense are unlocked because you finally feel safe to release them. You feel the mother energy, you get that hug, and you feel like you can finally, the part of you finally releases. And that's extremely challenging. So what would you advise, or how can we work with that?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, so feeling and emotions. There can be a flood of feeling when we start to feel safe, and it can be a little bit of a shock for us when we open to the, the volume of feeling that's been stuffed down with a closed locked door, throw away the key kind of thing. And then all of a sudden the love starts to seep in and it opens us to all of this. And my worldview, and I know we share this worldview, is that feelings and emotions are so sacred. They're not sacred in the sense that we need to listen to them as the ultimate truth and follow them. They're sacred in that they exist because they're something that our bodies created through an experience that was real for us. And when we start to open to greater volumes of feeling, the first thing that's needed is so practical, but it's really true, is breath, so that we don't, what I call, take a bath in our feelings. It's very different to take a bath in your feelings, meaning you just sit there and feel it and don't know what to do and it's overwhelming, versus feelings being like a flowing river. And the difference in those two, one is intention, this intention that, okay, I'm opening to more feeling than I've maybe ever opened to, and it's uncomfortable, and I'm okay, and it's uncomfortable. The intention to open to it and move it, versus not really having an intention going into those feelings and just being, just kind of soaking in them. And when we breathe, it's so simple, but we can forget to breathe when we're feeling so much. It moves all of this energy through our bodies. And then with that and some other practices that I work with, we can transmute feeling into life force, or transmute feeling into something that will ultimately benefit us. So the first thing is opening up to feeling without feeling like we need to do anything with it, right? Push it down or react to it. And then the second thing is learning how to move the feeling. And sometimes the feeling is so much that it needs to actually move out, like screaming in the woods, or if people don't have woods to go walk into, scream in their car. And when we are on a spiritual path, or we want to be really good people, I notice a lot of people who are maybe meditators. If you listen to this and you're a meditator, or you're on a path, it can be hard to feel like you're a good person and you're going and screaming whatever you want in the woods, and getting that out. Sometimes it does need to be moved out of the throat and out through the physicality, through words, and then we can do more subtle integration and digestion of the feelings later. So those are a couple ways that we work with feelings. And Amba.
Yes, I remember being challenged by you to go screaming in the woods. I'm going, oh my God, how am I going to do this? It was like one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my entire life. Because my mother would never allow me being angry. Like I couldn't be angry. I couldn't have any emotion. And she would actually give out to me if I was quiet. But she would also give out to me if I wasn't. So there was like this complete confusion all the time. You didn't know where you stood ever. But definitely anger was not allowed. And so instead of going to anger, it was tears. Because if I cry, then whatever aggressive behavior diminishes a little bit. She wasn't like sometimes she has been physically aggressive, but mainly it was like emotional aggression. But that would diminish because somehow I'd make myself small and cry. She'd give out to me for crying, but it would lessen the load. But anger, like answering her, was unthinkable. So when I had to go and actually get angry, it was impossible. So that work, that moving it first, that finding that safety first within being held, and doing all of that allowed eventually the opening for that, which is key. And I can't stress it enough. We do a lot of breath within the work that we do, in the programs and stuff. It's like breath is just such a foundation for all of that. And it's not breath work, but there's so many different ways of breathing that we can bring to it, that either, just even bring up those emotions. I've learned since that you can breathe in a way that actually stirs the pot a little bit, so that then if you want to let out a bit of steam, that kind of happens through the breath, and then breathing in ways that just, calms it all back down and weaves it all together. So, and I know you work a lot with that, Meghan. Like breath is always the foundation of every practice we do. So I don't know if you have anything to add to this. Yeah, super welcome to do that.
Sure. Yeah, breathing. Yeah, I love what you're saying about breathing being such an exploration. There are so many ways to breathe, and sometimes breath is the medicine, the exactly what's needed to, as you say, stir up feeling. If our bodies have been trained to be non-reactive, non-responsive, to be so shut down and to not feel because it wasn't safe to feel, then oftentimes that's so needed. Also, movements like shaking, or movement that helps to wake up the animal, really, so that the animal is part of this kind of holistic healing journey that we're on, where the primal is not shamed or belittled, and stirring up feelings intentionally in a prayerful space can be just what's needed when the body's kind of frozen, and can do meditation and gentle practices, but is really kind of shut down from anger. So yeah, that's great that you are offering that. And their breath is like, it's this huge array, it's this huge menu that we can choose from. And so I think it's good to know what kind of breath we're choosing, and why, for real clear intention. So
Yeah. Something is coming to mind of what you said earlier when you were talking about the relationship with your mom. You mentioned that she was very skilled at looking in a certain way and appearing as like an angel and like that kind of amazing person with no flaws, but that also she was very skilled at having you dissolving, like, and it was all about her, but your identity was just not a thing anymore, which I want to see if you can elaborate on that, because that's such a big thing when a mother has a narcissistic behavior, narcissistic traits. There is that the identity of the daughter is completely dissolved, and we are completely enmeshed with the mother. So
yeah.
if you can speak to that and how your work actually helps finding back that identity.
Sure. Yeah, that is such a big piece of the healing. This untangling our psyches, and there are different ways that, narcissistic mothers they're kind of different approaches to how they do that. I know I just felt so ugly and gross. I just felt so like I had no idea. I was this beautiful little girl, this adorable little girl, and I just felt so disgusting. And and I don't now. I mean, thank goodness there are ways where we can really get to that root, and it takes time, but feel into this. The so there are so many pieces and layers. But one thing that I do, and I still do, and I share this with all the women who work with me, is I prioritize my sovereign connection with the divine, with the earth, with the sky, my connection as the first relationship before any other person, even like a romantic partner. That comes first, and that relationship, as someone's on a journey of healing from a narcissistic mother, that is so huge. It's like this whole other primary relationship. And when we pull away from that relationship, that for most of us in this kind of situation is like our everything, we get like, a lot of us don't have friends growing up, or like everyone else is bad, right? And to some degree, or criticized, and so we stick with the mom, and we're kind of like one psychic blob. So when we untangle from that, the loneliness that's there, the kind of social loneliness from being so enmeshed and not having a lot of other strong connections, and then the spiritual loneliness. So the practice of opening ourselves to this love that's like gushing from within us, and it's coming from the earth, it's coming from all these places, that is such a way to consistently fill with ourselves, with that sense of belonging that we so crave. And when your mother is not a true healthy source of that sense of belonging, other than belonging to her in that way, then that's needed that's needed more than anything. That sense of I belong here, I'm loved, and I can feel this consistently. So there are a bunch of other practices, but I would say that's the foundation. And and that's so healing in itself, because then we people can come and go through their things, but we always have that sense of like okayness. I'm okay, I belong here. It's felt in the body. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. And the loneliness is a big thing, because when when we have this relationship, and as you mentioned correctly, like there's so many different ways a narcissistic mother can, can go at it. Like there's a million of different ones. There's more covert, there's more abusive, there's like more in your face, and there's lots of different ways. Like sometimes I have women telling me my mother was not narcissistic, she was more a victim. Victim energy is self-absorbed, and so it is actually narcissistic, because it's emotionally unavailable for your child because you are self-absorbed. So there's so many different ways, but they all kind of create this weird addiction to this relationship, because the whole point is controlling your daughter. It's that to fulfill whatever emotional need the mother has, she manipulates and controls. So the identity is lost, and all your relationships are completely revolving around this person, whether she's hurting you obviously or not. There's still that. So even when we go into finally finding a space and beginning to understand this relationship, beginning to set boundaries, all the way to go no contact, like I am, like you've mentioned, Meghan, you are, the loneliness is a big thing. And I do get a lot of women telling me, but this doesn't make sense. I should be happy that my mom is not in my life now, or that I'm setting boundaries, and yet I'm feeling so desperately alone. So being able to find that source inside, and to connect with the divine that way, it's like it really comes in and fills that space.
Yes. And I will also say that finding women who hold that imprint of love, of steadiness, of like the love of the earth that doesn't come and go and isn't so shaky, that's been huge for me too. And I know that for those women who work with you, they receive that from you because that's what you've cultivated in you. And I think it's important to have both the intangible divine imprint and also finding women in our lives, whether they're mentors or friends, or like we adopt them as an auntie, however they come through, we feel, oh, this is like women are actually safe, and or they can be safe. And that is, I don't know if I would say that's as important, because the other one, the feeling a relationship with the divine no matter what, feels like it's just the very foundation that we can have. As long as we are here, we have that. But then this one is, this feels like an essential component as well, to learn to trust it. When our main experience of connection with women was this like incredibly damaging journey that we can repair. I feel like that's part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that that's one of the main, so that's actually a brilliant point you're bringing up. I love this, because it's one of the main stoppers or obstacles when we're advertising and putting out forward as an offering women's circles. There's like, I get a lot of emails where it's like, oh, I don't know how I can even be in a space with these women, like I'm gonna die, this is too dangerous and threatening. and which is sometimes very true. I know you've spoken to that, but I personally have had experiences in women's circles that were more traumatizing than healing, because that can be a part of it, but it's not inherent. When you find the right tribe, when you find women that resonate with that energy that you're speaking, that grounded earth energy, that they're devoting their life to that and to their own healing journey. And then there's another component that I feel is really essential, is humility, which when you're like humble in that journey, then all that judgmental sort of passive aggressive sort of stuff that can happen within some containers is not there. And I know, like, your circles for me have been actually like a very big thing, because it was that safety. Like, there was that safety. I found it. I've been very blessed. I've had containers even here where I am locally and with amazing women, but your circles have been really, really instrumental, because the safety that you create is really, really beautiful.
So glad to hear that. That's always the intention, to offer something that I didn't receive, right? Like what you're doing, it's like we can receive all this and then transmute it and then offer something into the world that we didn't get, that we so needed. So yeah, safety is key, especially for all women and women's circles. Yeah, just like everything, there's a mix of everything. But safety is so key for those of us who have a history of, not feeling safe with women, with our mothers in particular.
Absolutely. So both things, the relationship with the divine and finding other women that you can relate with and feel safe, and just little by little, because it doesn't have to happen all in one go, but little by little beginning to open to receive from other women and share with other women. There's so much healing in that, so much healing. Like, I definitely speak from experience, but I know you do too.
Mm-hmm.
There's one particular aspect to that, and I also come from yoga. I started teaching yoga when I was 20, so like it's a very similar journey in that, and started, like, I really can't take a yoga class now. I'm like, it has to be very particular, or I like it, just I can't anymore, because that moving in a way that is sort of like a performance, and that kind of brings you out. Now, I'm not speaking, I do know beautiful yoga teachers that actually have shifted powerfully and teach yoga, but teach from a really different place. So I'm not making it all like one thing, but there's a lot out there that is still very performance based, is very like get the tension out of the body, fix it, move like everyone else. And that in itself feels very unsafe, because when you have had a mother the way we've had, you kind of had to perform in front of her all the time.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so interesting. I've recently been exploring taking yoga classes. So it's interesting that you bring this up, because the other day, do we have time for this? Can I
Yes,
share?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it was maybe a couple weeks ago. It's just a studio down the street, so it's really convenient, and it's warm, and it's cold here in the winter where I am in Central Oregon. So I was trying some classes out, and we were in shoulder stand. And 20 years ago, I took a training with T.S. Little. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's
Yeah.
amazing. And he taught this way of doing shoulder stand where you keep your feet like 2 feet apart. You have your legs wide instead of together. And ever since, it's just felt so good on my body. So we were in shoulder stand. I was doing that. And the teacher said, your legs need to be together. She was just saying it to the whole room. And then rather than coming over to me, you know where this is going. she proceeded to say it about 4 or 5 more times, a little more passive aggressively each time. And still I'm here with my legs a couple feet apart, toes soft, not doing the flex thing that she's also saying. Because not, and I think what happens is there's a sense of you're rebelling, right? You're rebelling against the teacher's wisdom. And I actually, now I usually set the teacher up like, hey, this is, just so you know, I'm not rebelling, but I didn't have time before this class. I'm just tuning into my body. I like to set them up. So, but afterwards, I was really affected by this. And it was more, right, because you never know when you're going to get tapped. So I was really grateful for the experience, because I thought, okay, this is just a yoga class. It's fine. And then I went in and felt, oh, this is a mom thing. Like, it affected me so much. This is a mom thing. This is where it's not okay to do what's really right for me. Or it wasn't okay. Now it is, because of how I've created my life. But it was so interesting how much that impacted me at this point, but in a way where it was just bringing more up to look at. So yeah, it can be really hard to go to yoga or other kinds of classes where there's an expectation to do it their way, and you feel like you're being a bad student or something. Not necessarily feel, but you're being made to feel like you're being a bad student when you do it the way that really works for you, but maybe isn't the way that's being offered.
Yeah, I remember finding it so incredibly uncomfortable to do a relaxing position, Shavasana at the end of class with my palms up and my arms to the side. I needed my hands on my belly. I always needed to keep it safe. And that was like one of those things. Even now, when we do deep nourishment in your beautiful circles and stuff, I very often my hands are on my belly, because it just makes it so safe. So that fact that I had to do it that way left me so exposed. And I remember teaching, and because obviously I had been trained that way, I thought the same way. At the beginning, it was like, because especially when my teacher was in class, when I was teaching, during apprenticeship and stuff, you just want to do what's right, in inverted commas. And then slowly developing a way of teaching that was like, actually, it's okay to feel. If and I find myself repeating that so much in every session with women now. I don't teach yoga anymore, but in sessions within the programs, it's okay, because we really need to hear that it's okay whatever you're feeling. It's okay if you want to sit. Like at the beginning of the program, it's like it's 10 weeks, but week 1 they're all like sitting straight, they're on a chair at a desk. And then as they go on, like you start feeling pajamas and on blankets and on cushion, because it's okay not to perform all the time, not to be so boxed in those rules that we've received from our mothers. We've been trained like that. There's no judgment in that. Like I get that. It's just that's how we've been taught we need to be, not to be put down all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes we've had mothers that have lived that as an example, who are always trying to look good, and that's their focus. And then we've absorbed that. We've just little sponge minds just absorbed that. And in order to, be loved, we have to, really perform and get love, through whatever, through looking the way we need to look. So I love you sharing about the evolution. We like everyone's more comfortable with themselves, and it's like the
Mm.
value that's in me isn't in any way related to, the performance. It's intrinsic, and I get that that's what you're offering women, is to really find
Mm. Mm.
intrinsic value that has nothing to do with the outside world.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, I'm feeling if there's anything else that that wants to come before we close. But we've covered a lot. There was a lot of really potent, juicy stuff in this conversation, and I knew that. I was so excited at the beginning. So actually, I want to share this because um, I think this is important to share. I have had many mentors, and many of those were women. And coming from that messed up relationship with my mother, which has actually been one of my mentors in some things, like she's taught me how to horse ride and a lot of stuff like that. So she was my teacher in certain situations. I tendentially either rebel completely against any authority because she was very like military authoritarian kind of style, and I go completely the opposite. So you tell me to relax, I tense. Like, it goes the opposite. Or I have had patterns of building up on pedestals so high and then beginning to project. So it can be very, very, I've had to unpack so much in every relationships I've had with different teachers. And at the beginning of this interview, like at the beginning of this episode, I could feel like I was sitting here waiting for the recording to start. Before we actually got on video and started chatting, I was here a few minutes before to get ready, and like my heart was like in my throat. with like, and I was like, what's happening? What's my body doing? Because I'm really happy and relaxed and excited to be on this conversation with, like, I mean, we have had a beautiful relationship, and yet my body is reacting, like everything is tensing up. I can feel that I'm beginning to shake. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to start breathing down into my belly. And I have been doing that for the entire, now I know this is a recording that is not going to be on video, so you can't see me, but I've been like swaying and moving with it so to say that no matter the amount of work, and maybe you can share something on that too, some advice on that, like no matter how much work you do, waves still come up. And that doesn't make us bad or wrong or not good students. That's just what happens. It's the natural process of it. And you just keep going back to breathing. But I don't know if you can add anything to that, that'd be great.
Sure. I love your open share, really feeling nourished by it. And I our bodies, one, they're alive, so they're always be feeling things, and a lot of that feeling will be uncomfortable. And I think there can be a tendency to, for some people, to think we'll get to a place where we will feel peaceful and joyful all the time, and that's the indicator that we have done the healing. And I feel uncomfortable every day, a lot of the time, and it's because I'm in an alive body, as you are. It's like our bodies sometimes they're responding to something in present time, that there's information, right, coming through the feeling. And then sometimes when the patterning runs so deep, like being in, from being in the womb, from the moment of conception, being this little being with a mother that's just not capable. However she got there is however she got there, but she's just not capable of providing love. And that's our main caregiver for, a couple decades. That that runs so deep. And I'm very aware. Like I have tons of trauma. And it's fine. It's like, what if it's okay? What if it's totally okay? And what if it's possible to have a great life and keep letting it heal and unpack. And of course, there are seasons for going really deep into that and doing some really profound healing. And then we can just keep letting it come up and keep working with it in the moment. And like you say, breathe and move. So simple. And yet when we remember to do those things, it moves the energy. So one more layer has moved through.
Mm.
I just feel like that's really the way, is to be so okay with the fullness, the full range of feeling. And it's the contraction around the uncomfortable feeling that can be the what's so uncomfortable, right? So if you are feeling something like you were saying at the beginning and breathing into your belly and softening, then it's like really takes a lot of that and just moves it. And there's no, and then here we are. So yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's a wonderful final message to actually give, is that it's okay. It's really okay. It was okay for my heart to be in my throat at the beginning of this. That's okay. It's like, it's only when you start resisting it and then the judgment comes and all of that then it becomes like it makes it bigger, it inflates it. So it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel it all.
Mm.
And you're not a bad person because of that.
No, and there can even be a like, thank you, body. Thank you for feeling. Thank you so much. Thank you for feeling. That relationship with the body that opens up so much richness. So I love that. I love the it's okay. Like it's so okay. It's more than okay. Like thank you. Thank you for the nourishment of the feeling. Even though in the moment it doesn't always seem like nourishment, but but you breathe for a minute and there you go. It becomes this source of life force for all of us. So, yeah. Mm.
I love that. So yeah, bringing it to a close. I'm going to, of course, share in the description of the episode. There's gonna be the links to find you, Meghan. So anyone in the audience that just felt called to go and check out your offerings and stuff, that you're gonna find all the links in the description to be able to connect with Meghan. And yeah, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like, my thank you to you is always massive because it's like, thank you from the first time I met you, but thank you for this conversation because that has been really, really nourishing and beautiful.
Thank you too, Matilda. So delicious. So deeply delicious to my heart to get to dive in with you. And also, thanks everyone for listening. It's so beautiful to get to share this and feel like we're all so connected, doing this profound healing work as women on the earth right now. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone listening. And yeah, we're gonna leave you for today with lots of love. And bye everyone. Thanks for tuning in.